I have learned over my career, the first time I'm hiring a position, I'm not great at it. Like I still need to learn a lot about the job and the role and things. You could submit a resume online. We would add 3 questions to the end. And it was just like, what's the last interesting book you read? Well, you could like guarantee that the people who answered the questions were your best candidates.
I use that on like when I'm hiring at Upwork, right? I'll ask like 3 random questions.
My old boss used to say, he's like, I'm really tired of seeing the top of your head. Because this is what it looks like when I'm taking notes. My favorite interview question. Almost in every phone screen I do, I say, what are your top 10 strengths?
Top 10. Wow.
Top 10. No candidate is perfect. Every candidate has some blemishes. For me, the question around blemishes is always, are these the blemishes that I am willing to work with?
Welcome to How I Hire, the podcast where we talk with senior go-to-market leaders about how they find, vet, attract, and grow new talent. Today, I'm joined by Connor Fee. Connor is COO at Fathom, one of the top call recording platforms. We actually use it at Whispered. Connor has a long history of leading sales at great companies, including UserVoice, Clearbit, Shortcut, and also Winning by Design. And he advises some great up-and-coming companies, so check him out on his LinkedIn. Connor, it's great to have you today.
It's wonderful to be here. Thanks for having me.
No, I've been enjoying our conversations. I was excited to maybe start just by talk about like how do you recently joined, like how do you get the entire executive team aligned on the roles underneath you, the next level that you need? How do you kind of design the right roles? And when you hit the ground, how did you figure out where you needed to supplement the team?
It's funny. It's a very timely question because I just got back from an exec offsite last week, which I think you might know, which is why we scheduled it. Maybe you were leading me with this question.
I think you have some whispers, by the way, I would say out there.
I would say that, the first thing that I did see when I joined Fathom is like, this is a company, we're now almost 100 people. We hadn't really had a culture of like a leadership team and a group that would get together and work on things. And so that for me was a little bit of a blind spot. And so I was like, okay, I think we can make some progress there. And so the first thing was like, we just get everybody in a room and figure out what matters to us.
Yeah.
Matters to us as a team, matters to us as a company. And certainly we spent 3 days together last week. We're not done by any stretch of the imagination, but our goal was progress, not perfection. Mm-hmm. And I came out of that feeling way more confident about where we want to go, where we want to take the company, et cetera. If you get some of those questions answered, then as you think about sort of where you need people and where you want to hire and how you think about those things, they get a lot easier, right? So we aligned on, I think, 4 major goals for the company. And one of them is kind of in this bucket of operating model, financial model, like the simulation tools and techniques that we can run our business. And it's hard to be an exec at Fathom without the tools to do your job kind of thing. And so, what was maybe not the top bullet item for my next set of hires rapidly bumped up the list. Mm-hmm. Because now that is that is a company-wide goal that we want to align and support on. And so, I think a lot of that happened quite organically, but it will have a considerable impact on sort of how I go to hire. The other component there, and we were sort of just talking about this recently, is I think a lot of times people will, my vision of what a VP of sales is and your vision of what a VP of sales is can be slightly different. And so title can be this like thing that is a shorthand. Title is effectively a shorthand for us attempting to share information with each other. But I've seen, and not just I've also been in places where you get a month into the hiring process and everyone is like, oh, this candidate wasn't great. And you're like, what did we miss? And you're like, well, what were you looking for that you didn't get? And you realize like their yardstick of what great is and your yardstick of what great is are sort of slightly different. Yeah. And you weren't aligned in the first place kind of thing. So as I'm starting to think about hires for my team, we are big believers in sort of the who method, the who scorecard. And I think deeply about like, hey, you are going to the store, you are going to buy something. What is the thing you're going to buy, going to accomplish in the next 6 months? Not how many years of experience they have, not whatever. Like, what's the outcome that you want to buy? And it's actually been remarkable to see us. Like, it took us, we're going to hire a head of data here shortly. And it took us like across a couple of different, it took us like 4 or 5 turns on like, what are the 4 things the head of data is going to accomplish? Because everybody sort of wanted something slightly different. And we had to actually go through the exercise of like, what are we willing, like what is truly at the top of the list for us? I think that will make the process significantly easier than now that we get into it.
The alignment is so valuable, right? Like you want to work at companies where there is that executive alignment without revealing any of your strategy for the next 6 months. What kind of surprises came out of an executive offsite like that from an alignment perspective?
I'll give you a funny story. Have you ever played this game Fishbowl or Celebrity? You ever played this?
No.
Okay. So it's a game where you everybody writes down names in a hat. Or everybody writes down names, you throw them in a hat, and there's 3 rounds. In the first round, you can say whatever words you want. Once you go through all the names, they go back in. So you use the same names for all 3 rounds, basically. There's no rules. It's a made-up game, right? There's no box you open. There's no instructions. So everyone's house rules version of it is slightly different.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a group of people who, really have been together. Some of them have been together in person. Some of them worked together for a while. Some of us were brand new.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the first day, we were in kind of a knockdown screaming match about this game, to the point where I was like, "Ooh, maybe we took this too far." And the next day, CEO was like, "I don't think we should play that game again." And everyone else was like, "No, we want to play. We want to play." And it was fascinating because there are 2 members of our team that sat down. You always on a offsite, you always have those big Post-it note boards, right? Two members of our team sat down and literally negotiated the rules. And then wrote the rules down, and then wrote the punishment for failing the rules. And the second time we played it, it was everyone now understood how to play. The norms were established and the rules were established, and it was loud and noisy and wild. But it was, to me, what came out of that 3 days. I was like, oh my God, this group of people was gonna yell, was yelling at each other. And the next day we're no, we're gonna do it again, and we're gonna be better this time. And I was like, this is my group of people.
Oh, I love that. That's kind of like the Rochambeau rock, paper, scissors debate. First, there's the name of the game. Second is, do you go on 3 or do you go 1, 2, 3 and then shoot?
Funny on that. We did Bear Ninja Cowboy to start which team went, which is just another version of rock, paper, scissors, but you have to turn around and then you jump around and there's a whole thing. Actually, no arguments there, surprisingly. But yes, if you haven't played Bear Ninja Cowboy, it's a much more visceral, fun game of rock, paper, scissors.
Fathom's executive offsites sound like the best ones I've ever heard. That's cool. So you hit the ground running. You got a lot of alignment early. How did you evaluate the team underneath you? Actually, we didn't cover this, but you've got marketing and sales, or what?
No. So I'm responsible right now for RevOps, BizOps, data, finance, people, sales and marketing, different functions.
Gotcha.
Actually.
Okay, that makes total sense. Yeah.
So I am, although that was a point of concern in the interview process for me. So my goal was to begin to learn more parts of the company beyond just marketing. I've always said I want to be CEO before I retire. And if all I ever know is sales and marketing, then I won't be a great CEO. So this was a very intentional series of choices for me. But there was definitely concern, I think, on the sales and marketing leaders of if we hire this guy, can he actually stay in his lane?
Stay in his box, yeah.
It's a totally valid concern. And what I actually said this very strongly to our VP of sales. I said, I know how to be CRO. I can do that very well. I think I can kind of do it with my eyes closed. I don't want to be CRO. I want to teach you to be CRO. That's actually the joy that I'm going to get out of this experience. So my job with this function is actually much more advisor, coach, and investor almost. I'll try to give thoughts when I think they're doing something that seems very concerning to me, or very off the path. But I just had a conversation with our VP sales 2 weeks ago where she was like, I want to make this change. And I was like, I don't get it. I don't see it. I disagree. We're on the phone for 20 minutes. And I was like, oh, you're right. Your data's better. I'm wrong. You have my blessing. Go with God. And she kept arguing. And I was like, no. I literally changed my mind right here, right now. You don't need to win anymore. And it was funny because 5 minutes later, she was like, can we revisit that? And I was like, you got it. You won. Don't still pass the close. So when I joined the team, my team's about 10 people, but I don't own marketing and sales. I own more support functions here.
That makes sense. COO can be anything. I actually reported to the COO at Carta who ran all of revenue, but it's different everywhere.
Yep.
It is COO is such an interesting path, and we could spend a whole podcast on that, but I won't do that one for sure. That makes tons of sense. And it's really valuable to have somebody in the seat you're in that understands pipeline coverage, funnel metrics, how do things flow. So that is interesting. How did you figure out the rules you needed to invest in or add when you took over the function?
Well, I mean, I think The short kind of crappy answer here, right, is like one of the things, I guess that's actually not fair. I can give a slightly more thoughtful answer than that. One of the things I did at Winning by Design, right, and then I've done subsequently in later sort of stints in different versions, is like you get really good at doing like assessment. Like I think a lot of times when you hire a new CRO or hire a COO or whatever, like the first set of things is like, let's do an assessment, let's design what we want the org to look like going forward, and then let's go and like implement that strategy basically. And so that concept of like do an assessment, I've probably done 15 times in the last 10 years, right? Like it's something I've done a lot basically. And so, at Winning by Design, we had a like kind of a structured format that was like, look at the data, interview the people, interview management, sit in on meetings, et cetera. And so, it's a little less structured here because an ops function can be a lot of different departments and do a lot of different things. But in many ways, it's not wildly dissimilar, right? It's like sit down with the leaders of the different functions. Okay, like what are your key goals? What are you trying to accomplish? What does that align to from a company standpoint? And one of the things I found, and again, this goes back to my earlier comment, was like, I actually found a lot of talent in my organization, but not aimed at the same set of targets. Well, there's no company goals. There's no clear, concise company. So no, I don't know what I can say in a podcast, but no shit, they're not aimed at the same targets, right? Like, and so the phrase that I was using a lot inside the organization was locally optimized, not globally optimized. We were seeing inside the organization a lot. We were just, marketing or sales or data or RevOps was doing whatever seemed like the most obvious thing for them to do, clearest thing for them to do. But if you like zoom out to 1,000 feet, what's the biggest thing for the company to do? It might be actually RevOps needs to do this thing that supports this data thing that supports sales and the transition that they're making. But they just don't see it because that path actually isn't tied to a big clear number.
Dude, like these people that you just described are all seeking that clarity. And if you can bring that clarity, that is huge, right? Like I can't tell you how many times people I need that clarity from exec. I don't have it. So I'm going to do the thing that I think is the best, or the person that I talked to recently versus, no, there are 3 company goals. And if it doesn't align to one of those, like don't do it.
I think that I'll push back on your perspective there a little bit. I think people want company goals as long as company goals. People want that clarity as long as that clarity gives them the allowance to do the thing they wanted to do anyway.
Yeah.
And I mean, like there's plenty of time where you get clarity on something. You're like, well, crap, that wasn't what I wanted to do. Right now, I got to go do this hard thing over here. That's a little bit different, basically. And I think in the end, people would rather have the clarity and be told to do the hard thing than to sort of be in nebulous land. But it does come sometimes with the hard fact that now the big company goal thing is not the thing that aligns with the thing that you want it to do.
I do think maybe what people are seeking is a framework that they can apply to prioritization that they don't have. But I hear you on, sometimes you're like, I know where I think I can make the most impact, but that may not be the area where the company needs you right now.
We're trying so hard as an organizational leadership team. We're trying really hard to get better at knowing one-way door decisions, two-way door decisions, and when we can give more why in context so that our teams can make more decisions and all that stuff doesn't have to come. I mean, the company a year ago was less than 30 people. And so like almost every decision could sort of end up on the CEO's desk and that was like totally okay. And now that's just it's not going to scale, right? Like his time is, I can't make all the decisions. He can't make all the decisions. So we're trying to figure out quickly what's that rubric for like push decision, not push it down, but like enable your frontline folks to make those decisions without having to. But a lot of that involves investing in these are clear goals. This is why they matter. And the why behind a lot of that.
I was just on another podcast with Mike Weir, the former CRO at G2. And we talked a lot about this one. I think, and I'd be curious how you guys structure it, but we talked a lot about does the CEO, where is the decision point in the org for cross GTM, right? So oftentimes I'm used to CRO that has both marketing and sales and CS underneath it. And then the CEO does not need to get involved in that level. Mike had some really good takes on if the CEO wants them really to just run sales, well, then they also have to be willing to get pretty deep into the weeds on pipeline decisions or handoffs and things like that. So
Agreed.
Fascinated to hear how you guys have thought about it. And then also just how you've thought about that throughout your career.
Like I'm a huge fan of like the rapid framework. Some people, there's rapid and there's racy and they can be confused. Racy is a little bit about like how do you manage a project getting done, and rapid is a little bit around how you make a decision. I have seen so many organizations where nobody knows who the decision maker is.
Oh, yep.
Right. And so I'm like, guys, just rapid. Like, it's just like, there's a decision maker I don't remember, there's approver, there's input, there's recommenders, whatever. There's a bunch of things. But at the end of the day, it's like there's a decision maker. There's people whose input you have to take very seriously. There's people who get to veto you if they don't like said decision. And then there's other people who are going to be peripherally involved, basically. And so related to hiring, this is a perfect example. I told my team I've told my teams in the past, I don't think we've had this conversation as a team now, but I will tell my team when the time comes, is like, I am the decider. Sorry, it's not a democracy.
Yep.
Like your input will be taken very seriously. And my boss, the CEO, can veto a decision. If I say, here's the decision, we're going to go hire X, he can say no, right? He has that power. I have the same, when you're hiring your team, you are the decider, and I have that same veto power. Veto power is tricky. You have to use it sparingly, because if you use it too much, then you're not really enabling a decider, basically. But where at all possible, I just try to be really explicit about like who owns the decision and what is my role in that decision-making process. We're going to make decisions in the marketing org, and I came up through marketing. I have deep thoughts about how a marketing org should work, but I'm just input. I get to say my 2 cents. It is not my decision to make. It is not my decision to veto. And that's A-okay. And that's cool.
I think that helps so many people. I've always used Daisy myself, but whatever it is, it's like I stuck that into place at Card, and people like decisions just got made faster, right? And it's like sometimes we all have to be put in our place a little bit, right? It's like cool, it's like okay, but that's not actually your decision to make, and so that's like okay, let's call it out and move on. Well, shifting back to hiring for a second, like
yep.
How do you think about both within the current role, but also in past roles? Like, how do you think about hiring senior roles? Like, do you post them out there? Do you work through the networks? What has worked for you in the past to kind of find folks, and how do you approach that?
There's like a couple thoughts here. So first is that I have learned over my career, the first time I'm hiring a position, I'm not great at it.
Huh.
Like I still need to learn a lot about the job and the role and the things. And so if it's a senior role, like there are some senior roles that I'm going to need to hire that will be the first time I'm hiring them, right? We'll hire a finance lead here in the not too distant future. And I haven't run a finance. I've been a customer. I've worked closely. I have lots of thoughts. In those instances, sort of a process I've run now, I probably have interviewed somewhere between 10 and 15 different finance leaders, and like really digging at like different orgs, PLG, non-PLG, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then like shameless plug for Fathom. I took all those meetings, put them in a thing, and then said, okay, Fathom, give me the like download 5 bullet points of what are the mistakes that I'm going to make when interviewing these candidates. And then I sort of use that to think about the hiring process. So, there's a special kickoff for when it's a role I don't feel like I'm sort of good at hiring, basically. When I do feel I'm more competent, especially at senior roles, I would say first things first is like, I want to get buy-in across the leadership organization, right? So that is a kind of like a socialization exercise of, hey, we're thinking about doing X. There's a role where we just started looking for, and I went to our VP marketing. And I was like, what do you think? And she's like, I don't know. I have these concerns. And I was like, great. Here's my argument for them, for why. And she was like, okay, great. I think it holds. And that's one of those for me. It's like, if the argument doesn't survive basic questioning, then it wasn't that good of an argument in the first place. If it does, then I'm more confident that the argument is right. We're confident that we're going sort of down the right direction, basically. Once I've got that sort of buy-in, then I'm going to make sure that the team knows, especially if they're going to be impacted by it. And then in terms of like posting versus not posting, we'll probably post. I think the answer is like in previous lives, we often didn't post because the inbound flux, the inbound can be great, but the signal to noise ratio is hard, right? And will be interesting. We're testing some new AI tools. This is like a perfect use case for AI, right? Like it's like ingest a ton of data, and it's essentially like a machine learning model, basically, right? Like here's a bunch of resumes. Here's 5 that look really good. Now go pattern match against these, basically. So I think we'll post. We will almost always use external recruiters for the major senior roles. We have a recruiting team right now of 1. It is soon to be 2, and will not in the distant future be 3. And I've worked with internal recruiters in previous lives, but it's a mixed bag in the sense that sometimes you have them, sometimes you don't. So sometimes you're on your own, sometimes you're not. Sort of depends on the size and scope of the company, basically. We'll post it. We'll probably post it. We'll use an external recruiter. Luckily for me, on one of my senior roles, I'll use an external recruiter that I've had success with 4 times.
Wow.
So to a certain extent, like I'm going to call them and be like, hey, we kind of know this thing together.
I love your point on the resumes, the AI, the pattern matching. So we work with a number of top VCs, and one of them always, when they send us a role, they're like, here are the 5 people that we think even if they're not available, would be the best types of people.
Yep.
And I could see more and more people should do that.
I didn't used to do it actually. So, I like to think I know what I'm doing at this day and age. Like I'm 40 odd years into this life. I have a general sense of what I know and what I don't know. And I was going back and forth with our head of people, and she was like, "You should put 5 LinkedIn profiles here that are really good." And it was one of those moments where I was like, "Oh shit, I should absolutely do that." Yep, that is now in my bag. That's now my go forward model. Like, didn't do it before, but it's better than what I do. So we're just gonna beg, borrow, and steal and stick it right in the pack. And like, yeah.
I love. Is your ATS then going out and using AI to say we want to find other ones similar to these, or is it more just what you've said is? Because I definitely know every time I get together with a recruiter, they're like, "Hey, can you give me 5?" And I give them 5, and they're like, "Cool, now you've educated me." But if you gone the next step of literally like the ATS is using that pattern matching,
don't quote me on the technology behind it, right? Like this is where I'm leaning on sort of Allison, our head of people. But my understanding is we can guide the Ashby tool to basically like it can ingest the inbound and sort of effectively like score them. And so it doesn't, it's one of these, like, it doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to like get to the top 10%. From there, we should be able to figure out, which of that is stuff we want to talk to versus not.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah. Getting through the signal to noise is huge. That's powerful. Okay. So you got a role. How do people find you? You've been a sales guy before. Like, how do people break through to get through to you? What's effective? Is it networking into you, cold emailing you? Like, how can people say Ashby does not do well by them, right? And but they're actually relatively qualified. Like, how can somebody get through to you?
Yeah, I think this is like a dangerous question to answer, right? Because they're going
to all use
assuming they're relatively qualified is and I get it. We've all been in a position where we're trying to find a job, right? We're trying to break through, basically, right? I'll say I'll give you a perfect example. I started doing this years ago. And so I'll give you a short story, and then I'll give you a more thoughtful answer. I started doing this years ago, where we would have the resume, like you could submit a resume online. We would add 3 questions to the end. Like, I don't think they were required.
Yeah.
Right. And it was just like, what's the last interesting book you read, or what's like the most interesting go-to-market move you've seen in the last 6 months or something like that.
Yeah.
And you could like guarantee that the people who answered the questions were your best candidates, like 1,000x better. In fact, I think for like a 3-year stretch, it just happened that I never hired a person who didn't. I never hired a person. Every person I hired had answered the questions, basically.
I use that on, like, when I'm hiring at Upwork, right? I'll ask 3 random questions. And if you do not answer the questions, I do not reply, because it's like you can't even follow instructions, right? It's
attention to detail, right? Like, especially when I'm hiring. So like, again, data team, RevOps team, BizOps team, right? Like, a lot of that job is built on attention. We talk about, early in your career, you may be doing stuff that is not super sexy, not super interesting, but it builds and ladders into other things, right? And it's like, if you build that on an accurate foundation, then everything's fine. But if you build it off an accurate, if there's something wrong in the data, there's something wrong in the insight, then the whole thing sort of crumbles apart, basically. And so attention to detail, I actually think, is like one of those things that, like, just very valuable for anyone. So one, that is like a surefire way to get my attention, is to like if we ask you a question, give a thoughtful answer to said question, right? Like really quite easy. The second thing I'd say is, I think probably the easiest way to get to me, the most sure way to get my attention, is to get someone I trust to speak on your behalf, right? And I think it's probably not just true for me, it's probably just true for everyone. That's just like an incredible shortcut, basically, right? Beyond that, like, you can write a thoughtful email, you can write, you can do all of these things that you don't have access to. But I think, especially in senior roles, right? Like, I think we get to a stage in our career where, like, I am not 6 degrees. I'm 4 degrees from the vast majority of people that I could ever. I'm 2 degrees from the vast majority of people in a work setting that I could get to, that I could want to get to, basically. What I think people have a tendency to do is be like, oh, I see we're both connected to X. And I'm like, that is a name that I've never seen before. I may have been connected to them on LinkedIn at one point. There's like two people in the world. There's people who like accept every LinkedIn connection that comes their way. And then me being like, I don't know, you delete. I don't know, you delete. I don't know, you delete. Right. And so I think that if it's very interesting and you're very serious, then you're going to reach out to somebody like, hey, how well do you know this person? Do you feel comfortable making an introduction? Right. And that's very different than, oh, I see we both know so-and-so. Or I see we have a bunch of people in common. Do you know so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so? Like, I think one of them is it's a bit of a proxy for like, are you willing to do the work? Right. And do you recognize, I have one of my favorite stories. This was told to me by my boss years ago. He said, we all work in an office basically. Mm-hmm. And all of us carry around this little velvet bag. Okay. And so like, it's a little velvet bag. It's got a flat bottom. It's got a little drawstring at the top. And every meeting we go to, we take our little velvet bag and we set it down on the table. And when you open that velvet bag, you realize that it's full of poop. That's what it is. It's the crap that you're carrying around all day. Okay. He said, there are two types of employees. Employees that put poop into your bag in every meeting and employees that take poop out of your bag in every meeting. I think my comment around the individual who's like, let me find the introduction, let me get it, is really a proxy for the individual who's like, let me take the cognitive load off of Connor, right? Like, it's not like, hey, do you know these 6 people that we might be connected to? It's like, no, I found the right person. I got the intro. I got them to vouch for me. Like, there's so much cognitive load off of me in that case, right? And so I think that's why that is one that just will resonate with not just with me, but like anyone that's hiring.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, there is the forwardable email concept. It's like, don't send me a, hey man, can you connect me with Connor? It's like, hey, can you with Connor? Here's the email that I might write. But I like it in so many other contexts, that story too, right? There's just the positive people and the negative people. There's also the people that report to you that are like, cool, can you tell me what to do?
Yeah.
Versus like, hey, here are the 4 things I thought of. You're aware of this one? Like, cool, I am. Like, we're good then. And
listen, I love people that are like, here are the 4 things I think we should do. And I'm like, none of those are right. But I'm so freaking glad that you thought about it in advance. Like, it's not actually, it doesn't matter that you were wrong. It's irrelevant. Like, you attempted to do the work because inevitably after we do this 3 or 4 more times, you'll know what those 4 things are because you'll learn them by osmosis from us doing those things. I can't it's hard to teach but I thought about it already. And these are the 4 things I think we should do. That comes or doesn't come with the hire, so to speak.
I've got a great article I'll send you on the power of managing up, right? Like, I only hire people that can manage up to me. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? And it's like, I do not want to be chasing a director plus level. I do not want to be chasing you down. I want you to be chasing me down and pushing me.
I have a cheat code for this. We talked about it a little bit, but the amount of frustration that I feel when we've talked about you're going to take something on and do it. And then 3 weeks go by and I'm like, wait, where did that how did that? And then I like poke around and realize, where is that? And you're like, oh crap, I haven't gotten around to that. I'm like, it is like, we all have our little pet peeves in life, right? For me, that's like one of those, like, I cannot believe that it was like on me to hold on to that. Right.
Yeah.
So I have 2 cheat codes. One is I'm a huge believer in this concept of impeccable agreements. And impeccable agreements is this like 15 commitments to conscious leadership. Like, you have to say yes, you have to have a date, you have to do all these things. That's one. I'm not great at it. I'm getting better, but I'm not great at it, but I'm getting better. And then the second one is I have Fathom route all the action items. We use Fathom for all of our meetings, including our internal meetings, which at first I kind of thought was crazy. But now after every meeting, every Fathom action item is routed to Asana and it's in the board with the person I was meeting with, and it's assigned to which one of us owns it, basically.
Fathom's amazing. And so we're using it for every one of our executives we speak with before we invite them to join Whisper Pro. And it literally gives me the action items and I send it to them. I didn't want to auto trigger, but now I literally screenshot, like, great call. Here's the screenshot from Fathom. Here's the 3 things you need to do. Right. So it's like the action items are on you now, not me.
Yeah. And what's awesome about, at least for me, is having them in Asana is that when we get back together, they're publicly available. Like, I'm not like, it's not that I'm like remembering something from 3 weeks ago. It's like, Asana is right here next to this board, but it literally says to dos and there's like 6 things there and they're assigned to you or me, basically. Right. And so a little bit of a cheat code there to make my life a little bit easier. I didn't anticipate that being a thing that I would enjoy about joining this company. And I kind of now don't look forward to the day when it doesn't exist, or when I go to some other company and they're like, well, we can't record the meetings, we can't do whatever. So
it's powerful when you work at a company with a tool you love. That's also a great segue into interview process. Like I'm imagining you guys use and drink your own Kool-Aid pretty extensively for interviews. So it'd be fun to hear like both your personal philosophy and then how do you use Fathom in the interview process?
Well, I'll give you a funny story. When I was being interviewed, we have a small office in the Salesforce Tower here in San Francisco. There's a handful of our AI team, which is kind of like an R&D team. They work mostly out of that office. Very few other folks do. But when I was interviewing, a couple of the execs were in town and they were like, come into the office and you can sort of meet people live. It's like, great. Fathom doesn't have, let me put this, I don't want to get shot by the VP of product.
They don't have the app,
Fathom
right? Doesn't
doesn't have an in-person tool for listening and recording to meetings. Doesn't currently have. That's what I will say, and then I will leave it there, basically. And so during my interviews, we were using all of the other players in the space. Like they would walk in and they would be like, "I'm going to record this. Are you being recorded?" And at first I was like, "Eh," and then I was like, "What do I care, right? Like if I'm lying in the meeting, I'm lying in the meeting. That's on me, whether it's recorded or not recorded." And so it is just part of how we work as a company, right? Like it is like every meeting is recorded. I love my third week on the job. I was like, I thought Emily said something about that. I went back to my first week meeting and like asked it a question. It linked to a section of the video and I listened to it again. And I was like, oh man, I really didn't hear her in the first week. Like I didn't have the context yet. Mm-hmm. And so the ability to go back and sort of relive that was like very, very helpful. We are with the interviews, because we run a sort of structured set of interviews. I'm very excited. In past lives, I would spend a lot of the interview trying to take detailed notes. Mm-hmm. This is a place where like, once you're settled into a company and you know kind of everything that's going on, you're not taking a ton of notes. When I was in consulting, you're taking notes all the time because like you're constantly learning new things, new companies, new businesses. Once you're settled into a company, you're not taking notes as much.
Sure.
In an interview, I was always taking notes all the time because I was asking the same questions to the same candidates and I wanted to, same questions to different candidates. And I wanted to be able to look like candidate to candidate. Like, was this a common theme? Was this not a common theme? Whatever. And I wanted, frankly, when you meet, 15 people in a week, the ability to remember who they are is like its own challenge, basically. What did they say were their top 10 strengths kind of thing? And so I'm super excited because we will be able to Fathom is this concept of templates where there's a generic template, but you can say, I'm running an interview and I want, these are the questions I'm going to ask. Please return the results kind of like this, basically. Mm-hmm. And so we're testing that now for one of the hires on my team. I'm super excited for it because I think it will let me be a little bit more present. One of the things my old boss used to say, I'll show you, I'll give you an example of this. My old boss used to say, he's like, I'm really tired of seeing the top of your head because this is what it looks like when I'm taking notes. And it's fine because it is a visual cue that I'm taking a note and that's great. But like at a certain point, you're seeing the top of my head like a lot, basically. And so I'm a little bit excited to be able to be a little bit more engaged. And I will say up front, like, hey, I would normally take a lot of notes. The notes are getting taken for me. So I'm going to get to be a little bit more interactive here kind of thing. So super excited.
I remember when I interviewed at Google one time and the guy was like taking notes on his laptop while I was interviewing. I was like, that's fucking insulting, right? So I'm always a on paper type of person rather than on a laptop. But I think it does take it the next level further, which is nice. I think I haven't yet adopted the queryable engine to go back and look at these things. And so I think that's a whole interesting thing. Right?
Well, I'll give you a great example. I'm super excited about this, right? So
for candidates and stuff, the Fathom recordings.
Say again, sorry.
Are you like when the recruiter comes together with you and the rest of the panel to evaluate a candidate, like are you looking at Fathom as well too there and listening to snippets of those calls, or what's the culture you have of actually using the recordings within the interview process?
I would say so it's a little bit TBD because I'm still kind of 2.5 months in. We're still figuring some of this out a little bit. I would say there's one very clear instance. So one of the things we do throughout the process is we ask candidates over a number of different times. We'll ask them, who is your boss? How would they rate you on a score of 1 to 10? Why would they give you that score? And who was your peer? Why would they give you that score? Who was your boss's boss? Why would they give you that score? When we get to the reference checks, I'm a huge believer in, I don't ask for references. I say, these are the 5 names I want to talk to. Right. Yeah. Based on all the conversations we've had, these are the 5 names I want to talk to. And I'd love for you to make an introduction. What's awesome about Fathom is I can go back and say, deliver me a list of all the names they mentioned they work for, the scores, and the summary of why that individual thought they were great and why that individual could improve. That then is exactly what I take to each one of those reference calls. And I say, hey, this person told me you'd give them a 6. And they said you'd give them a 6 because they were great at this and they were less great at this. Do you agree? Does that resonate with you? Do you think that they've changed? Like it allows for the like distillation of those notes into a simple tool for me to go do reference checks that I didn't have before.
That's like really brilliant. That's so smart.
That's sort of the obvious one. I think the second one is a little bit different, and that is one that we haven't quite mastered, and that is like trying to see if there's any time when something shows up for one interviewer that other interviewers are like, oh, that kind of did show up for me. And so that's where I think we may use some of the recordings, but I don't know yet how to write the query or ask the question or get the thing to really get a really useful, concise set of data for that.
I love that one. And I've seen that so many times of like, they came across a little bit, like non-excited about the role. And everyone's like, well, what are you talking about? They were amazingly excited. And so what people should do is, well, let's just listen to it and see what you didn't have and be like, oh, I see what you meant there, or I didn't see.
Or I would have a totally different read on that situation or whatever, right? Like, yeah.
I love that. That's cool. Do you have a favorite interview question, Connor?
I do. I'm terribly afraid to share it.
I know. Do you have a second favorite interview question?
No, I think it's okay to share the favorite interview question.
But here, remember what we talked about, which is its attention to detail. So the only people that will learn your favorite interview question, because we won't
the ones that show do the work. Yeah, fair enough. It's by the way, this is not rocket science. It's also very findable, right? So if you wanted to do this, you could absolutely find this. My favorite interview question. Almost in every phone screen I do, I say, what are your top 10 strengths?
Top 10. Wow.
Top 10. And I think you can almost if I think about this quickly, I can almost do this. I'll say, hey, great. I would love to understand what you're really good at work. Walk me through what are your top 10 strengths. It's okay. You're going to stumble after 3 or 4 or 5. Uh-huh. I'll take notes, right? I'm going to write them down. But I want to see more than just the top of the glossary, basically. And then I love sitting there through some of the semi-awkwardness while they struggle with 7, 8, 9, and 10.
And you'll wait until they get to 10.
Until they get to 10. We don't stop until they get to 10. People will do a thing and they'll say, people will do a thing and they'll be like, that's all I can think of. And I'll go, okay, well, what would your boss say? What would your peers say? What would somebody who works for you say? Like there's different follow-on questions to sort of get the juices flowing, basically. But when I'm trying to really understand an individual and a candidate, understanding not just their 3 headline strengths, but what actually shows up beyond that is hyper valuable, in my opinion. It also shows, like, frankly, their willingness to sort of like be like, okay, I wasn't ready for that question. I know my top 3, but now I have to think a little bit. And you learn a lot in that. And then the follow-on question is like, you pick out a couple and you're like, walk me through some examples there. And that question just is wildly informative. Like, I can kind of tell you, that's one of the phone screen interviews. I can kind of tell you whether someone's going to make it through the rest of the process based on the answer to that question alone.
That's fun. I'm going to try that one at some point. There's a lot that you pick up in that. The awkwardness. I'm a big fan of awkward pauses. It's I always have to teach people in these huddles that we do with our members all the time. Like, I'm going to have an awkward pause and we're going to wait until there's a question and it ain't going to come from me. And so I think you've kind of got that exact same thing there. That's neat.
I try.
Okay. So we talked about how you source references. Any specific tactics in how you do references?
Yeah, we run a derivative of the Who method. So there's actually a very structured portion to this. We ask the candidates, throughout the process, we ask candidates, if I was to call this person and ask them to score you 1 to 10, what would they say? Why would they give you that score? And so when you get into a reference check, one of the things I've learned over the years, and I think anyone who's ever done this knows, references are going to try to be positive.
Yeah.
Right? This is like, they don't want to torpedo anyone's chances of being successful. Right? And so I always think about reference checks as like, well, what's the goal here? Right? What are you trying to accomplish? Are you trying to make sure that they have 5 people that you can call that will say nice things about them? Everyone has 5 people that you can call that will say nice things about them. So that's not what we're trying to do here. I think about reference checks as no candidate is perfect. Every candidate has some blemishes. For me, the question around blemishes is always, are these the blemishes that I am willing to work with? Mm-hmm. Are they the ones I'm willing to coach on? Are they the ones that don't bother me, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And so the way that we will ask the reference questions is we'll say things like, what was this person's biggest challenge way back when you worked with them? And that question is like very intentional because it's not saying what's their biggest challenge, it's saying what's their biggest challenge all that long time ago, right? It's allowing the referencee, I don't know, the person giving the reference to be a little bit more honest because they know that time has elapsed and this person has changed and it doesn't mean that they're the same person that they was at that time, basically. I also love saying, this person told me that you would say one of their biggest challenges was X. Would you agree and do you mind elaborating? That question basically gives them the green light, the permission to talk openly about the thing because I said, this person told me you were going to mention X. Is that right? Like, what would you say about X? Talk about X. And so I find that those two components, basically like acknowledging that it was then, not now, and acknowledging that I already know. Like, this isn't going to be a surprise to me when you tell me that they struggle with
public speaking
public speaking. Like, it's not new. I already know that. By the way, they told me you said that they're not a great public speaker. Is that still the case? Would you agree with that? And they can be like, oh, oh yeah, okay, yeah, they're terrible, right? Like, fine. Again, if that's something that's really important to me, that's fine. I need to suss that out. Or is that a blemish that I'm sort of like, okay, living with kind of thing? Blemish might be the wrong phrase. I don't mean to insult people. I'm just saying that like we all have idiosyncrasies, some of which work well with some people, some of which don't work as well with some people. So for me, the reference check is often more of we like this person. Maybe there's one or two questions that we are still open and trying to answer, but a lot of it comes down to what are the things that other people might find frustrating or difficult, and am I willing to take on those challenges, so to speak?
I love that, man. I've learned a lot on references. It's like every time I talk to somebody I talked to a VC person the other day, they're like, I don't really care how you interview. I care how the references work. And I think this is bringing that all together in a neat, fun, powerful way. I'm excited to see what other use cases you come up with for Fathom in the hiring process as well, too. So we'll have to keep in touch on that.
I'll report back, I promise.
Yeah. What's maybe as we wrap up, like, tell me how you make a new hire successful.
Lots of time with them. The short answer is lots of time with them. Especially in senior roles, right? Like at a 100% company, it's not all figured out, right? This is not like you roll in and you've got 2 weeks worth of training and there's a department to onboard. No, and so what I have found is both from my own experience, but also managing others, like 30 minutes every day for the first 3 weeks, like goes a really long way.
This is exactly mine too. And by the end of that, you're going to know. You're
never far away. Like you're just never far. So I use Asana, you can use Monday, use whatever, but like I have a board for everyone that I meet with. And so whenever I would need to ask someone something, I'll kind of just stick it in that board. And then I forget about it so that when we get together, here are all the things I needed to ask you about, basically, right? Especially if they're not time sensitive, right? And so, what's great about this is I say, look, if you need me immediately get me, but you got me at the end of every day for 30 minutes, right? And so just stick your questions, stick your comments in a little box. And at the end of every day, we're never more than 8 hours away from talking, basically. And so for me, I think the simplest answer is just recognizing that there's a bunch of time that needs to be developed early on.
That is amazing. Well, not only do you guys have the world's best exec offsites and the best alignment, but they've got really cool technology. So Connor, thank you so much for taking the time today. This was amazing. I'm excited to continue to talk about how your tech is evolving.
It's always a pleasure to spend time, my friend.